It started as a text thread that could have stayed a stupid idea and died politely at midnight. Instead it grew teeth. Jason sent a grainy screenshot of a TikTok, a shaky vertical showing a rooftop pool glowing blue above a skyline, a caption that said, "Public areas on private roofs, who knew?" He added an arrow and a single message, "We should do this." No context, no plan, just the way Jason leaned into the future like it owed him favors. Brianna replied with a laughing emoji and, "You always find the weirdest places." Mara, who usually vetoed anything with the word should, said, "If we go, I'm only coming to supervise." Her supervise was always the same as everyone's, "I'll be careful," a theatrical promise that dissolved into the first wrong decision. I remember standing in my kitchen, phone lighting up my face, thinking maybe this one would be boring. Maybe we'd drive, see the pool in the video, take a selfie of our feet on the curb, and eat bad food on the way home. Then I remembered last summer's library after hours caper, which had involved duct tape, a strategically timed sneeze from Marcus, and a security guard who liked crossword puzzles more than his job. That one had become a story that looped into every future plan like a chorus we refused to skip. So I texted, "I'm in," because 3 words is how you enroll yourself in trouble when the band is playing. We met at 9 at the 24/7 kebab shop on the corner, neutral ground, greasy napkins, the kind of fluorescent light that makes conspiracies feel glamorous. Jason arrived with a duffel bag and the grin of someone who'd already forgiven himself. Brianna wore an oversized button-up and a pair of sunglasses she kept on even though it was night. Mara had an orange beanie pulled low and an expression that read, "I will be the person who keeps us from felony charges, maybe." The plan, if you could call it a plan, was staggeringly simple: look like we belonged. Dress sharp enough that the building's camera algorithms would mark us as resident adjacent. Carry towels and a gym bag so if asked we could claim a midweek swim. Don't break anything until at least 3 drinks of confidence had been consumed at the rooftop bar. If someone asked for ID, hand them a story and keep it short. Sensible, almost, if your definition of sensible is a suggestion rather than a rulebook. On the drive the city smeared past in light and late-night pizza signs. We argued like adults about sneakers versus loafers and whether a fanny pack was retro or an admission of defeat. Jason insisted a fanny pack was neutral territory. "It's utility, not irony," he said. My phone buzzed with a memory of the time we tried sneaking into a college pool party and ended up leading a toddler's birthday conga line for 30 terrifying seconds before being politely escorted out. We laughed and swore, theatrically, that this time would be different. Pulling up to the building, the lobby looked like a postcard someone forgot to update: marble floors, a potted tree with more light than sense, and a security desk with a man whose job seemed to be checking the speed limit with his eyes. We approached with the practiced confidence of people who had watched too many movies about cons and learned nothing useful. Jason swiped a key card he'd picked up from some other fool's pocket months ago as a curiosity, and the reader chimed green. The doors sighed and opened. We filed through like extras in someone else's life. The elevator ride felt like crossing an unmarked border. There's a strange silence in elevator rides when you shouldn't be there. It's quieter than normal quiet, full of potential consequences. Mara claimed she could smell chlorine as if the building itself pre-breathed for us. Jason hummed a pop song he didn't know the lyrics to, which is how he covers up violent brain activity. When the doors opened onto the rooftop, the view punched a hole in everything I'd been worrying about. The pool glowed a deep saturated blue, trimmed in soft lights that made the surface look like a piece of sky someone had put in a rectangle. The skyline spread like an audience. A handful of people lounged in corners, earbuds in, the kind of people who owned Sage and didn't need permission to be calm. For the first 20 minutes we did the natural things, toes in, shoulders shrugging at how ridiculous it felt. Jason staged elaborate Instagram moments with a towel draped like a cape. Brianna floated with a cigarette-free cigarette between her fingers. She'd quit months ago as a flex against past versions of herself, and told us how she planned to retire at 32 on the smell of basil and regret. Mara sat on the edge, knees doubled, and conducted a low-level inventory of escape routes like an anxious stage manager. I drifted between them, narrating in my head. The way your chest does that thing where it wants to write a story about whatever you're currently doing. Then Jason climbed up onto a platform on the far end, someone's maintenance ledge if you read the unlabeled signs, and announced he would attempt a backflip. The logic of his announcement matched the logic of most things we did. He saw a thing, the thing had potential for spectacle, we agreed, either explicitly or by not stopping him. When he launched, he resembled a man in an old cartoon who thought momentum was a personal favor. He belly flopped with the confidence of someone delivering a punchline. The sound cracked through the night like someone slamming a book closed. Heads turned. Footsteps followed. Security moved faster than the pool's slow reaction. A patrol of one sprinted up, polo shirt, radio at his mouth, the achievement badge of someone whose job fluctuated between apathy and fury. He barked into his radio in a language built of clipped consonants. We could have owned the moment by being calm. That requires craft we didn't possess. What are you doing? The guard demanded. Brianna's mouth opened and out came, without permission, pool inspection. The words were an offering to a myth. Jason, wet hair slicked into a ridiculous angle, raised a towel like a banner of innocence and said, "Yeah, we're doing a check to see if the, chlorine levels meet hospitality standards." The guard's face registered the exact point where incredulity stops being funny and becomes, fill out incident report. His radio crackled, someone answered. He blinked, maybe deciding we were a pair of harmless idiots and not menaces who needed arresting for trespass. He told us to leave. He did not chase. He did not shout. He did not follow. He returned to his post as if the night had filed us into a subfolder of strange but not worth files. We retreated, dignity dripping with water, and raced through the elevator like fugitives who had escaped a minor miscount of their lives. I'd say we were sober, but that would be a lie. Adrenaline lubricates memory in a way that feels like a cocktail. We hopped into the car and howled with laughter until our sides hurt, and we had the kind of panting laughter that makes you feel heroic and slightly older than you are. We ended up at the diner because the universe knows where to point you when you need grease and time. The booth wrapped around us with the sympathy booths are famous for. The waitress took one look, poured coffee, and folded the menu into a supplication. We ate pancakes that left fingerprints on the tablecloth like evidence that some laws are just suggestions. Between forkfuls, Jason turned his flop into a nail-biting epic. He described the angle, the arc, the way the city seemed to inhale and then reckon with him. Brianna supplied sound effects and the line, "You could have killed the vibe," which hit like an insult and a compliment all at once. Mara analyzed our chances of getting banned from the building and assigned a low probability, which was generous. I told the story like I was watching from the end credits and everyone clapped for us in the telling. That should have been the end. It was not. 3 nights later, at precisely the stupid hour when you think adult life is consensual, Jason texted a grainy photo, a different rooftop, a glass fence, a sign that read, "Members only despite you." His message, round 2? He had the audacity of a man who reads sequel credits and thinks, we can do better. Brianna, predictably, replied with a gif of a superhero opening a subterranean lair, which translated to, absolutely. We tried to be better planners this time. Mistakes pile up when you assume fate is a friend, so we brought an actual list. List, version 2, Mara said, tapping a pen against a napkin. The list included the usual, exit strategy, distraction item, non-lethal defensive measure. Jason suggested a pool noodle as a feint, and, for reasons only his parents could understand, a small tool kit. We don't need tools, Brianna said, but she tucked a pair of work gloves into her bag like someone who half believed in responsibility. On the drive over, the car smelled of leftover syrup and another kind of sweet, the scent of a story building momentum. We shared small confessions, who had kissed whom at which party, who had briefly considered moving away, kind of the stuff that fills the interstices of friendship. It makes the risky things softer because you can always tell the story later and it will sound like a metaphor. The building this time was a glass rectangle, reflective as a mirror that wants your secrets back. We approached with a new plan, confidence, but quieter. Walk like you've done this before. Sit like you own somewhere. Smile like your lawyer taught you the expression's contours. For reasons no one should decode, somebody else's key card opened the lobby doors with the cheery beep of acceptance. We took the elevator and listened for the small laughs you get when you think you have outwitted a camera. Rooftop 2 was a different breed. There were real loungers with candles, a man in a sport coat who had read 5 paragraphs further into the novel of his life than the rest of us combined. The pool nook had cabanas and string lights that made everyone look like they were in a better budget rom-com. There was a bartender who would have carted a ghost and a sign that read, "Residents Only." We hovered at the periphery like polite moths. Jason tried the angle where you look bored enough that someone offers you an invite. It did not work. Brianna, who had once been an intern at an events company and therefore trained in the art of schmooze, offered to take a photo for a dining couple. The couple accepted and, like that, our camera skills bought us 30 seconds of legitimacy. We paraded our towels until no one asked for credentials and then did what we'd come to do, pretend. We floated, we laughed, we strategically occupied the shallow end like toddlers with an expiration date. An older woman with pearls and a drink that glittered like midnight in a glass observed us like a docent. "Enjoy your evening," she said, and we did, because we were good at enjoying things before consequences were tallied. The Rooftop was not a theater for our comedy that night. It was a stage where people practiced being adults. That made our small trespasses feel tender rather than criminal. We were the punchline, but the joke landed soft. Then, a different kind of complication. A kid. Not a child but a person who seemed to have been tasting adulthood for about 3 days and was proud of it, stumbled toward the pool, phone in hand, filming something for an audience that judged him by likes. He slipped, barely saved his dignity, and Jason, in a move that seems to have been licensed by old hero movies, leapt to help. It was the kind of help that gets applause in supermarkets and makes your chest warm for reasons you can't properly audit. The kid thanked him with an embarrassingly sincere gratitude between teeth. I watched the exchange with the odd feeling that sometimes the universe corrects itself by returning favors. We clinked cups of water in a mock salute to the kid's dignity and then snuck away before performing anything that required bravery. We'd almost convinced ourselves we were harmless until the Rooftop's overnight maintenance guy, an elderly man with a flashlight and a tendency to speak the world's rules as if he'd written them, caught our attention. He had the sort of face that should have belonged to someone who knows exactly when to tell a story and exactly when to keep quiet. "You kids all right?" he asked. For reasons a human should not possess, Jason answered, "We're better than all right." "We are," he flailed for an adjective, "experiencing communal rejuvenation." The man snorted and walked away, which we decided was about as close to permission as life gives you for free. We squeezed in a few more minutes, then took our leave with the kind of polite haste that made us feel literate and maybe not criminal. Back at our favorite diner 3 hours later, under the forgiveness of neon, the night expanded in the telling. We compared the rooftops like blind judges comparing fine wines. Brianna described the pearls drink in colors that would have made an art professor weep. Mara logged the maintenance guy as caretaker, not a cop. Jason played a loop of the kid's grateful smile like a soft overlay to the night. I wrote little annotations in the margins of the memory. Sometimes, 2 weeks after an adventure, you see the sunlight catch on some surface and it behaves like a movie clip that belongs to you. I found a ribbon of tape stuck to the hem of my jacket the next morning, pink flagging, a souvenir from a gap in a fence, or a rooftop wayward thread, and held it between 2 fingers like a relic. Our antics didn't stop at rooftops. Over the summer it felt like the city itself was a set of decisions waiting for us to prove our courage. We borrowed a rooftop again. We snuck into a closed botanical garden once. Don't do it, the sprinklers have opinions. We held competitions like small kingdoms dedicated to shame and glory. We learned each other's limits not by asking but by tripping over them. Those smaller, knowing bruises knit us into a band that could make a late-night misadventure into something you told at weddings if you were tasteful. The real lesson of that summer, which should have been obvious, was that reckless things tend to behave well when you treat them with a little humility. The times they misbehaved, like Jason's flop, they spun into gold because we laughed while running. In the small ways, we practiced returning favors the city had given us, a saving hand, a finished cigarette stub, a silent respect for someone who tightened a loose bolt on a railing without asking for applause. Months later, in the off-season, when the nights closed in sooner and the rooftops stored their warm bodies away like blankets, we still told the stories. They changed. The details pulled on coats and carried umbrellas. In one version the security guard was a detective who recognized us from a different life. In another, the rooftop was an invitation misread by fate. Stories are selfish, they get tailored to the person telling them. We each kept our favorite edits and defended them like ornaments. Those late-night diner recaps mattered because there the stakes were small: fries, coffee, the soft authority of vinyl seats, and the laughter was like a currency. We traded moments like paper bills. Remember when Jason attempted gymnastics on municipal property? And someone would add a footnote, also remember the time we almost tripped the fire alarm at the gala. The rhythm became our thing: story, laugh, small moral, if we must, then do not belly flop, and move on. Once, we stayed out so late the city started to fold the way paper does when someone is done reading the page. The street vendors were packing their carts and the last of the night's dogs were trotting their negligible kingdoms. A man in a suit shared a bench with us and told us he'd once been a skateboarder who had outgrown the chutzpah for edges and learned to prefer conference rooms. He said, "There are nights you take and nights you keep." He tapped his pocket like it contained a secret virus of practical wisdom. We listened because sometimes adults give good things away and you take them. On a quiet morning months after the summer that felt too full to be true, I unrolled a printed photo that Brianna had processed and slipped into my glove box like a pressed flower. It was grainy, the pool like a blue eye and a small elbow of a figure mid-flop, not heroic but committed. On the edge of the frame, the kid from the rooftop was caught mid-laugh, the sound frozen like a comet. Under the photo, someone had written in pen, "Keep your hands and feet inside, unless you can tell a story about it later." We didn't promise forever. We promised plans that had room for error. We promised to call each other when one of us felt like doing something questionable or wonderful. That promise was small and practical, like an instruction manual for friendship. We knew not every late night would end with pancakes, nor should they. Some nights yield to quiet walks, to talks that change the shape of who you are, to the realization that a person can be braver in private than in performance. Years later, when someone asked me if I regretted those nights, I thought of the rooftop, the glare of the blue pool, the shape of Mara's beanie, the kid with his phone, the kindly maintenance man, the diner neon. Regret would imply a price paid and no lesson taken. I felt richer than that. If anything followed me out of those summer nights, it was not a habit of trespass but the conviction that small reckless acts can be stitches in a larger life, if you are careful with the people you stitch with. We learned to laugh at close calls and learned, slowly, to hold a hand steady when the other trembled. That's not romantic, it's practical. On the last night before the city softened into autumn, we met at the same diner like pilgrims checking pilgrimage maps. Brianna brought the printed photos, Jason requested pancakes and nothing else, Mara ordered black coffee and read aloud practical rules she'd invented about kindness. We made small bets on what the next year would offer and lost most of them cheerfully. At the end of the table, the waitress leaned in and said, "You kids keep having fun, but maybe wear drier clothes next time." We promised, with laughter and no testimony. I drove home under a sky that was honest about the coming cold. The rooftop sat like secret ornaments on the city's shoulders, quiet and patient. I slid my printed photo into the glove box and clicked the little ribbon of pink tape into a drawer where spare things live. I thought, not for the first time, about how the city keeps giving stories in small unpolished pieces and how we, eager and clumsy, gather them like sea glass. If you ever find yourself wondering where to be brave, maybe don't imitate us. But if you need a template for a picaresque that ends in pancakes and a learning curve, come by the 24/7 diner. We'll serve you coffee and the exact proportion of caution to thrill you ask for. Bring a towel. Keep your hands and feet inside the night if you can, and if you can't, make sure you have friends who will laugh while mopping up the mess. And if you hear a distant hollow thump that sounds like a city turning a page, it might be the echo of someone else's story starting. Go gently. Go curious. Go with a towel and a plan, and keep the photo that reminds you the best nights were the ones you almost didn't tell.